Rioting erupted across several South African cities on Sunday following the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma. The violence was concentrated mainly in Zuma's home province of KwaZulu-Natal, where he began serving a 15-month sentence for contempt of court. But the violence has spread to Gauteng province on Sunday, which includes Johannesburg, South Africa's largest city. In a late evening address yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that some 489 suspects have been arrested, and furthermore, the military has been deployed. But what kind of impact could these eruptions have on the Namibian economy? Well, joining us now is Economist, that's Salomo, with more. Very good morning to you, Salomo. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, Namibia.
Salomo, firstly, what do you make of the events transpiring in South Africa?
Well, those events are quite worrying because if you look at the roads that were barricaded, and it's one of the most important trade corridors, not only in South Africa, but on the region. Now, you've got the N3, which is, in my view, a national key point as it relates to the movement of goods and services that moves directly from the harbor in Durban. And if you move towards the northwest of that N3, you're moving into what we would refer to as the Eswatini. And if you continue on the N3 towards the inland, it links the north of South Africa with a harbor. So that's where you get past Harrismith and you connect via Bloemfontein on the N1, which is another important town as it relates to the agri sector, until you move into the economic hub, which is Gauteng, on the N1. And that comes directly from the N3. And if you continue moving up, then obviously you move into Limpopo. And once you're in Limpopo, it means that the trade with countries like Zimbabwe and the other landlocked trading partners of South Africa obviously connect through that route. Now, for perspective in terms of Namibia, you would be aware that our trade activity for May was around 14 billion, and of which almost 60% of that we trade with South Africa in terms of both on the export and the import side. And if you look at the total amount of import that we had for May was around 8.6 billion. Now, if you take that only on the import side, again another 43, which is a give or take a huge number, of which you must remember that 70% of the trade activity is essentially taking place, or rather the movement of goods is on roads. And these are the roads that have been impacted by this. So, it erupted that sub-region, and the developing world is still trying out of the third wave in terms of the variants that are mutating. Yep. You've got this other wave that's coming now through all these riots, where you've got the biggest economy in the sub-region being affected in this manner. So the recovery that was initially anticipated for some of the industries has completely taken another knock. As it relates to investor confidence, you know that it will have an impact on it. We had a look at the rand yesterday, and I think the rand lost value to its lowest.
Trading down at about, what, 1.5%?
Yes, yes, which is almost its lowest point since 2 months ago. So the fact of the matter is that things are not looking good. The supply disruptions will continue. It will mean that it will impact us negatively, because all our soft commodities, essentially, we get from South Africa. What we need to quickly look at is have we been able to divert traffic to our harbor?
So, Salomo, just a quick point there for you. Just looking at, of course, the extent of the disruption and the importance of some of these routes that you alluded to earlier, obviously this is something that we may not feel immediately, and considering that the expected calm with the deployment of the South African military, is this something that we should still be concerned about at this particular point in time?
Absolutely. I mean, remember that we were still recovering or trying to get out of the whole COVID thing. Namibia is flagged as a hotspot currently, and our trade activity or economic activity has been curtailed. We are still in a lockdown, I think until the 15th. So even with the deployment of the army, which is immediately now, you would see calm returning slowly to the South African society. But what you need to understand is that the impact and the ripple effect on such a 2-week or 1-week disruption means that it will have to reinvest back in property. You would have to lay off. People will lose their jobs. So it's an extremely difficult time, and it will be felt in the short to medium term. But with all economic cycles, we hope that we would be able to recover and move on. But for all intents and purposes, as things stand now, it's an extremely unexpected, it's an extremely undesirable turn of events that has unfolded in South Africa.
Indeed. Talking about that knock that the South African rand took, and in light of this development, what does that mean for the Namibian economy?
Well, like we indicated, that if you look at the rand in the emerging market baskets, it was one of the best performers, especially given the impact the pandemic had on developing economies or other emerging markets. So with this now, it's a knock, and you know that we are pegged to the rand, and our productive capacity is actually a bit too small to have any, or to rather derive the benefit of, say, a weakening rand. So essentially, all our benefits currently would be derived from the South African market. And with what's happening to them, it means that we might not even derive any sort of benefit, because in any case, we are not exporting at this point in time because of the little productive capacity that we have. But more so also what we give as perhaps raw product to South Africa for exports in terms of that aspect. It means that on their end as well, there's going to be little output because of the disruption and the riots that are currently happening. So there's a mini shutdown, if it were, on the South African economy. So there's very little benefit as it relates to maybe a weakening currency that would then, in the normal course of events, assist with a bigger production, because the demand would then have increased.
Salomo, I know initially when I spoke to you at the beginning of 2021, you had high hopes for Namibia's economy projection-wise. We put a lot of it, on slowing down the pandemic, on rolling out the vaccine, and that hasn't happened. The vaccine, we see evidently we're rolling out very slowly. We're struggling at this particular point in time. We've seen the impact of what's happening in South Africa. We see the worsening COVID situation in South Africa itself. And with this unrest there, the projections are even worse in terms of the numbers that South Africa can expect in the coming weeks. Again, our projections at this point in time, what does the picture look like for Namibia?
Well, there's a divergent recovery in the global economy. And what you pick up is that the countries that are projected to grow or that have made the recovery are really on a vaccine-powered recovery. Those that have got access to the vaccine are sort of returning to the pre-COVID levels. They are sort of moving back into some sort of normalcy. If you look at the UK, for instance, which is part of the developed economies, they are sort of scrapping all COVID-related lockdowns or guidelines on the 19th of July. They will start treating the pandemic as a flu. So what you need to understand there is really the sort of inequality that's also now starting to appear in between the developed economies and the developing economies. And this is why, for instance, if you look at the global economic outlook, the projections for 2021 is around 6%, of which the majority of that is being driven by the advanced economies. The US, for instance, is going to grow by 7%. Sub-Saharan is going to struggle to get beyond the 3%. And what we are seeing there is that if you don't have the vaccine, you will struggle in making the economic recovery that's needed.
Yep.
And you are correct. I mean, when we were speaking at the beginning of the year, we were thinking that the Namibian economy will recover, will be back on the bounce. But unfortunately, that has not happened because of the effect that the pandemic had on the smaller economy, is because we don't have access to the vaccine, and subsequently we are unable to get back to what we perceive to be the normal economic trading activities. So we're really in a difficult situation. I think if we had the sort of figures that we had for Q1, which is a decline of around 6.5, yeah. We had a lockdown now, starting from towards the end of June until now. So already what you have to understand is that we will really struggle to have any sort of growth for 2021, because the mutation of the variants also means that it will further suppress economic activity, because we have to respond in one form or the other. And the view is that the lockdown cannot take place in isolation. There needs to be other complementary sort of responses in relation or in support of the lockdown. We have seen that the past week there's been a slight improvement in terms of the numbers on a week-on-week basis, but the numbers that have come in over the weekend again don't look too good.
Yep.
We are anticipated to have one of the coldest weeks in the year, this coming week that we are in, and we then anticipate numbers to pick up again. So we are really in a very difficult economic situation. So we need to ride the storm. There is all of us to try and really flatten the curve. But in terms of the outlook, we really between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. Salomo, always a pleasure having you here on the program, talking all things economic related. Thank you so much for being here this morning, and we'll continue to engage you as things unravel here.